Hello and welcome, everybody. It is Coach Action Jackson, and we're here with another episode of Client Success Stories. I've got Alex here, and Alec, he lost 20 pounds in the program, 4% body fat, and 2.5 inches off of his waist. It's another classic no pack to six pack story. I'm very excited to share his story. Alec, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Coach. I'm glad to be here.
So why don't you introduce yourself, let people know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So Alex Stordomek, 36 years old, proud father of two. By trade, I am an attorney. I live in Chicago, born and raised. And yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Well, we definitely connect on our Chicago roots for sure, which is a fantastic thing. I love people who are from Chicago and the Midwest. It just brings me a ton of joy to work with those kinds of people, not just because of the background and connection, but I just know how important health and fitness is, especially in that area, coming from that area and growing up. There's not quite the level of attention and focus as there is sometimes on the coasts. But really excited to dig in here. Why don't we kind of just go back a little bit? And why don't you take me back to where you were before we started working together? Kind of, what was the drive, the motivation? Why did you want to make this big change in your life and join a program like this to begin with?
It was just a variety of factors. I would say going all the way back to, my high school days and, undergrad, when I was going from gym to gym and working out. And, the main focus at that time, I would say, was primarily just on the lifting aspect, right? Like, mixing in a little bit of aerobics, weightlifting, but, not so much focused on the dieting and the other pillars of fitness, as I hear you say all the time. From there, I then really transitioned post-COVID, wasn't going to the gym as often, obviously, during lockdown and for other reasons. So I ended up investing in a tonal. As we know, the tonal is not the cheapest piece of equipment, certainly by any stretch. That was going fine, I would say, for about a year and a half. I would say the gains and the progress was really marginal. So it was definitely better with the tonal. I noticed a difference from, when I was going to the gym and, my younger years going to the student rec center. But I just wasn't really seeing any gain from that, right? And so then I started to question, what am I doing wrong? What could I be doing in addition to my workouts and, my daily workout regimen? Do I need to do something with my diet? Is it a lifestyle change? And so I kind of started to ask these questions, right? And then I would say, like, in the midst of that too, it was sort of like the perfect storm. And so with two little kids at home, as I mentioned earlier, I noticed more and more on a daily basis, my son is picking up on things that, my wife and I will say, picking up on things that we do, right? And so I would say the second part of it was really just trying to set a good example for my kids on just living a better lifestyle, healthier, certainly more active, than I was when I was growing up. And so really it was just, on a personal level, trying to, see results for all the time I was putting in. And then, on the other hand, really just setting that example for my kids.
That really excites me and also resonates with me, because seeing my dad work out constantly and wanting to sort of emulate him. And there's this guy named Ed Milet that I follow. He's got a fantastic podcast. And he says that habits aren't taught to children, they're caught. Meaning kids are going to observe you, they're going to see what you do, and then they're likely going to do exactly what you're doing, not what you're telling them to do. So for example, my mom and dad, I had that dichotomy, right? My dad, much healthier, working out, doing all these things. My mom not doing any of those stuff. And my mom would say things like, eat your vegetables, but then, she wouldn't eat her vegetables. So then I just wouldn't eat vegetables. But then I'd see my dad working out and it was like, oh, okay, let me do this because he's doing it. So I really think that's so important and honestly very commendable that you want to be that example to your children. And again, I love working with people and helping people in the Midwest area because I think it's not a big enough priority yet, but it's really becoming one. And that's just awesome. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, yes, as you get into your 30s, mid 30s, and even 40s, 50s, whatever, it's not quite as easy as it was in your 20s, where you just go to the gym, you crank some sets and reps out, you stop drinking natty lights and maybe eating McDonald's, and it's like, bam, I got my six pack back, or here's the muscles. It gets a little more difficult as you get older. You really have to dial in the multiple pillars, as we like to call them, which is the training, the nutrition, the mindset, of course, and the accountability and support aspects as well. And it's only once you dial those things in that you get the leverage to see the results that you want. So you got the tonal, you're working out more regularly, which is great. That's certainly helping with your health and your fitness and your strength and such. But unless you combine it with the other pillars, especially diet, of course, you're not going to see those next level results, and you're not going to get the visible and the physical changes in your body. So that's fantastic that you have the self-awareness to really reach out and to notice that, but then also the desire to want to be that example. So fantastic. Now, what were some of the obstacles that you faced along the way? Because, when people watch or listen to these videos, they always think must have been easy for that person, or must be nice, or whatever. But the journey's never that simple. The path is never just laid out in front of you. As much as we all wish it was, there's always some obstacles along the way. So what were some of those that you experienced, and how did you overcome those?
I would say, believe it or not, the one thing that I thought would be the main obstacle, which is the physical part of the program and actually getting into the gym and, doing the workouts, following the workout tempos, and doing everything essentially according to the book, right? I would say that, believe it or not, in a way, that was the easiest part of the program. Not that it was easy. It was definitely not easy, but I would say the easiest part. The hardest part for me, believe it or not, was actually the daily tracking of the macros and just learning, how the certain food groups interact with one another, and, where to grab, if, I need a little bit of fat, to hit the numbers. What food groups do I need to sort of reach into to hit those numbers? Other than the actual tracking of the macros themselves, I would say some of the hidden pitfalls that you never think about, right? So like, you go grab a bottle of ketchup, are you thinking about how many carbs are in there, how much sugar per serving, right? So you start to become more in tune with this kind of stuff. And I think you threw out the analogy before that, it is sort of like learning how to swim. And I could not agree with that anymore. And essentially, for me to overcome that, it was it was basically, it was a bit of a learning curve, but, on a sort of day-to-day basis, just tracking foods. And, if I ever had a question, I'm either researching something online, or I was, messaging you directly. And I would say that was primarily the main way I overcame that obstacle. But yeah, I would definitely say that the macro tracking was one of the toughest challenges of this program.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think for a lot of people, the physical stuff usually becomes the easier part, because we can understand and comprehend that really simple. You do the workouts, you move the weight, you do the reps, you sweat, the heart, all that stuff. It makes sense. We can all grasp that. The hard part is the education when it comes to nutrition, the mindset, the psychology, all of that combined. Because there's two things that people do every day. They deal with money and they deal with food. So somehow or another, everyone thinks they're an expert in both of those things. Yet more often than not, people don't really know what they're doing with either, and especially with food. So we need to educate. We need to teach you things, because we can't just say, eat X, Y, and Z. Now, of course, we do say, hey, here are the things that you want to focus on, the foods you want to focus on, here maybe some ways of getting to these numbers. But we can't just tell you exactly what to eat every single day, all day, forever, because you're not going to follow that plan. It's going to be too restrictive. You're going to feel like you're being dictated to. You're going to be feeling like you're forced into it or handcuffed, and it's just not going to work. There's going to be no variety or flexibility or any of those things that we need for a long-term sustainable solution. So we have to start with education. We have to start with teaching you, understanding how to track what portion sizes actually look like, how much food your body really needs, what the right macros and portion sizes are of the different groups, protein, carbs, fats, etc., how to read labels, how to understand this stuff, and really a better understanding of the fuel, the gas that you're putting in your body, so you can get, again, those outcomes that you want: more energy, better physique, more muscle, less fat, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's certainly no surprise there. And I'm really, really glad that you were willing to invest in the education, right, and learning in order to overcome those obstacles, because those are skills then that you're building that will serve you in the future. And certainly some people find that tracking, they get so good at it, it becomes so easy, they could do it forever. Other people find that, hey, I might not want to do this forever, but it's a skill I built. Now I know how to do it. I can go back to it if and when I need it, but now I understand portion sizes, understand how to read labels. I have my 5 to 7 foods or snacks that I can go to, and I know roughly what I'm getting. So those are two sort of options for sustainable plans moving forward. Now, anything else that sticks out in your mind that were obstacles, or maybe insights and breakthroughs that you had along the way on this transformation?
Yeah. So other than that, I would say just going back over to, as I kind of mentioned, like the workout portion of it was the easiest. I do want to backpedal a bit and say that, while I think that was probably the easiest per se part of the program, if I could do the program over again, I would say that, being more in tune with the tempo setting, and, if it's a, 3-2-0 tempo, or, whatever the tempo may be, that you really understand what those numbers are and you follow it, right? Because anybody can go into a gym and, max out on the bench and, do a half-hearted bench press and call it a day. But I think the real difference becomes when you start fine-tuning your workouts and you drop the weight and, you correct the form, that, it just really makes a difference. And that's one of the other big takeaways from this program for me personally, was just sort of slowing things down and paying attention to tempo, form, and just sort of perfecting the reps, if you will.
Absolutely. And I could not agree more. I think ego is the enemy when it comes to getting results with your training. And especially as guys who've spent significant time in gyms, there is that ego element that comes out. When you go into a gym, you want to bench press, you want to put the 45s on the sides and get after 135 or more, because otherwise you feel weak putting the 35s or the 25s on or something. Even if a 35 or a 25 might serve you better, you don't want to do that, right? It doesn't feel good. So the good thing about tonal is that you're working out at home. Nobody can see your weights. Now, of course, there's a strength score. There's some elements of competition and leaderboard and other things that can pull that ego in. But being able to set the ego aside a bit and just say, you know what? I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to focus on improving my form, my range of motion, my time under tension, going slow. Not only are you going to get better results, but you're also going to significantly reduce your risk of injury. So injuries happen when people are moving explosively, moving very fast, right? Or getting out of control in their body, either of those two things. That's when injuries are most likely to happen. That's why they happen on things like deadlifts often and squats. And certainly they can happen on bench press when people are going too fast as well. But by slowing down, you're going to get more time under tension. You're going to build more muscle, of course, because you get the most muscle building benefits in the eccentric portion of the rep, meaning the stretching of the muscle, meaning like the down on the bicep curl or the lowering of the weight on the chest press. So you're going to get more benefit there, but then also you reduce that risk of injury significantly. So better results, lower risk of injury. It's like win-win, but your ego does take a bit of a hit because you might have to lower the weight a little bit. And to be quite honest, now that I'm in my 40s, I'm 41, I've had many injuries. I've torn my hamstring deadlifting. I've hurt my back. I've had bulging discs in my back. I've had sciatica. I've had all kinds of things, shoulder impingements. I've had so many injuries. I've really understood one thing. And this is something that Tony Horton told me, which is his tagline from Tonal, which is consistency is king. The more you do, the better you get. You got to be consistent if you want to get good results. And the best way of being consistent is not getting injured. So how are you going to avoid getting injured? And it's, again, focusing on good quality form. And if you start to get to a point where those weights start to get a little bit really heavy and you're noticing your form starting to fail, but more importantly, you notice that you're feeling a little too uncomfortable, a little bit like, that just doesn't feel right in my shoulder, my elbow, my knee just doesn't, it just, I don't know how it just doesn't feel right. You got to lower the weight. And then that's where you focus on, again, range of motion, time under tension, maybe some pauses or something else that you can do to still make progress without just increasing the weight. Because if it was just about increasing the weight forever, I'd be squatting 2,000 pounds and benching 1,000 by now. I've been working out for over 20 years. So you have to look at other forms of progressive overload in order to still get stronger, better, build muscle, but without that risk of injury. So I appreciate you bringing that up because I think it's a really important point. Now, in terms of like mindset, people love talking about the mindset of this kind of stuff. How did you manage mentally now, right? How did you manage mentally to go through this program, to kind of walk through the mud, the difficulties, the tracking, the tough workouts? How did you manage that mentally and stay consistent throughout the entirety and get such great results? Like, how are you able to manage that? Because so many people, as they're on a journey like this, it can be a mental struggle for them.
Absolutely. And to be honest, a fair question, because I have to say that for about the first few weeks of this program, I wasn't only questioning the program. As many people in the group say, I was sort of, questioning life. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself, I could be doing anything else in the world, but like, here I am going through this grueling program. But honestly, if you just take a step back and remind yourself on a daily basis, why am I doing this? For me, it was the just personal fitness, feeling better, looking better, having a resting heart rate. That was another thing. I don't know if I mentioned, but, my resting heart rate before I started the program was somewhere like in the 80s, high 70s and 80s. Where's it at now? About 65, low 60s. I don't get winded running up the stairs anymore, chasing my kids around. For me, again, it was just taking that step back and reminding myself, why am I doing this? Again, so it was the personal fitness and then just example setting for my kids. And then from there, I would say that, and any sort of gains, so the easier the program got and the more I noticed the gains, it was just sort of like a cascade effect from there. So, that motivated me to keep going and to push through the even more difficult parts of the program that are on the tail end. And so for me, really, again, it was just sort of stepping back and then, savoring those gains and saying that if I stick with this, the benefits are just going to continue accruing. And so that's what got me through the program, honestly.
Yeah, two very important points there. The first thing is asking yourself why. There's a great book out there from, I think his name's Charles Duhigg. He's written a couple of great books, but he wrote this book called, I think it's called Better, Smarter, Faster. And in this book, he talks about people who go through boot camp, like soldiers. And he said one of the exercises that the military teaches to try to build people that are, smarter, stronger, faster, et cetera, and to actually make it through training in boot camp to graduate and actually become, operating people in the military. One of the things they have them do is ask each other why they're going. So he talks about like the sort of the end test, the crucible, if you will, that they have to go through. And they'll ask each other during that test because it's grueling and it's many, many hours and they have to do all this teamwork stuff and it's very difficult. So they'll ask each other, why are you doing this? And they'll say, I'm doing this for my family, or I'm doing this, to have a better, future or career, or because I want to have a different life than my family or my past. So I think that's so important, is to remind yourself why you're doing it, because that, to your point, when you're questioning yourself, when you're doubting, when you're going through pain, or difficulty or anything that gets you outside your comfort zone like that, you're going to question it. And you're going to say, why am I doing this? I could be sitting on the couch. I could be doing X, Y, or Z. You have to remind yourself why you're doing it. And it's so important. It's also so powerful. And it seems so simple, but simple is often the best solution. And many of the things we teach in the program, they're simple. That doesn't mean they're easy. So it's a simple thing that's not easy, is reminding yourself why you're doing it. And the second thing is building that momentum up. And this is, again, so critical. You have to track many things. Why do you have to track many things in your journey? Because the more things you track, the more ways you have to win, and the more good things you're going to see that are happening. And one of the things that causes people to fail all the time is they start a program, or they're going through what they're doing, and they don't track anything. They just look in the mirror, step on the scale, and they say, nothing's working. I'm not making results. And maybe they're not. But by tracking more things, you'll at least get a tighter feedback loop, and you'll know what is working and what's not. If it's not working, you can know to make a shift. And when things are working, you're going to have lots of ways to measure it. And you're going to see, oh my gosh, my waist is getting smaller. I'm seeing results here. This is happening. That's happening. That's going to get you excited. The more excited you get, that's going to build momentum, and that's going to build what we think of as like that motivation. It's all about getting momentum. When I paid off $70,999.93 in credit card debt, I had to start with the first $50 payment. I had to get momentum. And as I got momentum, it started to build, and I started to get really excited. I started to really work a lot harder and find ways of getting money and this and that. And I paid it off in 14 months. I thought it was going to take 5 years. Paid it off in 14 months. It starts with momentum. You have to get that momentum. So 2 really, really incredible insights. So thank you for that. Let's see, anything else that you think is relevant, necessary, that you'd like to share before we kind of wrap things up here?
Yeah, so I would just say, for anybody out there that's on the fence about the program, and I would say do it. Oftentimes some of the questions that I get from family and friends, it'll be something to the effect of, well, what's going to happen when the program's over? Are you going to go back to your old ways? You're just going to gain the weight back? It's so much more than that, right? Because all of us at some point in time have been on some fad diet, whether it's, paleo, keto, whatever the case may be. It may work for a few months. It may work for half a year. It may work for a year. And then, usually those fail because they don't induce a lifestyle change like this program has, So just going back to not only learning about proper form and tempo, and, working out smarter and safer. But then, I learned a lot about macro tracking and being more in tune with the food that I'm eating. But beyond that, just tying everything together, I sort of analogize a program to putting your money in, investing, let's say in a property. Okay. So you invest the money, let's say, a few $100,000 into this property, property's paid off. You spent all this time and money and, into this investment. Why would you then destroy it at that point, right? So my analogy back to the program then is, you put in all this effort, and, you learn about all these like different lifestyle changes. And, it to me, then it's just a way to carry that forward.
I think it makes a lot of sense, because what we're trying to do for people, because to your point, you're right. So many people have tried things in the past: keto, paleo, intermittent fasting, this, that, but they're really not creating a lifestyle around it. They're just trying little tactical things, or they're trying things that they just can't manage forever, like keto, because it's like, okay, great. If you want to use keto to try to lose weight, that's fantastic. But you have to figure out a very sustainable way of transitioning to something else. And what's that something else? And if you don't know, and you're just like, I'm going to do keto, and then once I lose the weight, I'm going to go back to eating quote unquote normal again, you're just going to gain the weight back. So you have to have a strategy for a long-term sustainable solution. And that's what we're trying to teach. We're trying to build basic skills, right? We're trying to build basic skills, foundational skills that you can then build upon. So how do you train safely so that you can train for a very long time, ideally, so that you can get stronger, faster, better cardiovascular fitness, all of those things, but then do it forever. Okay, now how do you figure out portion sizes, track macros, learn what's in things, read nutrition labels. How do you build these skills, these nutritional skills, and get a framework and understanding for what quote unquote eating healthy is? Because everyone goes, oh, I just know I need to eat healthy. I need to be more disciplined. Okay, well, what does eating healthy mean? I don't know. It's kind of like sitting down with a financial planner and saying, save money. Okay, what does that mean? What assets? What's the interest rate? What's the asset allocation? We need to know what the framework is and the plan for eating healthy. So you get a framework, you get a plan, you get some foundational skills. Great. Now these can serve you moving forward. And then even if I get off track a little bit, which look, life is cyclical. Sometimes there's going to be some ups and some downs. You might gain, lose, etc. But you'll always know how to get back there because you have those skills. And then the last thing is really building a mindset and building an identity that's going to serve you moving forward. And so many people have these limiting beliefs around age, around things they can accomplish. I can't tell you how many times I work with clients who prior to joining the program say, well, in our family, people don't look like that, or people don't get six packs, or it's just not, it's just not my genetics to have abs or to get my body fat that low or to build muscle. And it's like BS. Like, genetics aside, you can make a tremendous amount of progress, but we need to change that mindset. And we do that through action. And you take these little actions, you build wins, which gets the momentum, which shifts your mindset. And once you develop a more rock solid mindset and shift your identity, anything's possible. And I see it all the time from people that I interview on these this sort of podcast. So I think that's the real important thing. And when you do those foundational things, those three things, the training, the nutrition, and the mindset, boy, that's a powerful combination moving forward for you. And now you have really a PhD in health and fitness that's going to serve you moving forward. And as we say all the time, we want to be the last fitness program people ever invest in. And we mean that. We don't want you to have to stick around forever. Now, some people choose to, and that's great. But really, we want to build skills for people so that they can take those skills, move forward, and then ideally, we can help other people. So that's what we're here for. So thank you again so much for trusting us, for investing in yourself, for putting in so much hard work and getting such great results. I can't say thank you enough because I really feel like the luckiest guy in the world. I have the most incredible job, and I get to coach amazing people like you and see the results that you get and put in, and it just means the world to me. So thank you so much for being awesome, for being you, and for getting such great results.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, you heard it. So take action, because that's the difference between dreaming and succeeding. We'll see you in the next one.